evening, everybody. Glad you come out in this blustery night. From what I hear, we are blessed. This little segment of Hingham right here has light. Apparently, no electricity when you go a few blocks. So I don't know, something magical about having Bob here. That I'll attribute it to him anyway. Again, thank you for coming out. My name is Dennis Corcoran. I'm director of the library. So welcome to Evening with the Author. This is a series that we've been doing for a number of years, and the series presents free events with authors in partnership with Buttonwood Books of Cohasset. The folks who are at the table in the back here and do such a great job of helping us bring writers, authors to the library. A whole purpose of the series is really to connect readers with writers. So tonight, our special guest, as you all know, and many of you should be more qualified than I to deliver this introduction, but I get the pleasure of doing it tonight. Our special guest is Hingham resident Bob Bryan. Bob's going to speak about his new book, Scribe, My Life in Sports. I will tell you personally, I had a chance to read a pre-publication copy of it. Really enjoyed it, recommend it to you highly, and hope that you'll be giving many copies for holiday gifts. As you saw, Buttonwood Books has copies of the book out there for purchase, and for later Bob will be doing a signing after the talk. Since he joined the Boston Globe Sports Department in 1968, sports fans have been blessed with the writing and reporting of Bob Bryan. Sports commentator Tony Kornheiser calls him the quintessential American sports writer. For the past 25 years, he's also been a regular on various ESPN shows, especially The Sports Reporter, spreading his knowledge and enthusiasm for sports of all kinds. Retired from daily duty at the Globe since 2012, Bob continues to write a column that appears regularly in the paper. His career coverage has included Baseball World Series, NBA Finals, Stanley Cup Finals, Super Bowls, college football bowls, and championship games, 29 college basketball tournament Final Fours, 11 Olympiads, college hockey, Frozen Fours, boxing, 3 Belmont Stakes, horse races of all kind, Triple Crown, and a dog show. So, when I was reading Bob's book, what I really loved was not so much the commentary about golf, although that was great, but I loved the stuff he did on the Olympics. It was such a terrific enthusiasm that came through for being there, and it was great. The game with Lithuania and Russia it just came through so great. What distinguishes, and this is, I guess, leads into this, what distinguishes his insights as a reporter and skills as a writer has been matched by an ability to connect with people, players, management, the reading public, and probably because at heart he has always been as much a fan as a reporter, and I think that's really the key. Scribe reveals the people behind the stories as only Bob Bryan can, from the NBA to 11 Olympics to his surprising favorite sport to cover, golf, and much more. So this is the sport that everyone's going to be talking about this season. The holidays are coming up, and as I said, Scribe will satisfy the sports fan in your life. Even if it's you, buy it for yourself. So please welcome Bob Bryan.
Thank you very much, Dennis, for that very kind introduction. Well, hello, Hingham. I always wanted to say that because you know how the rock stars always come out, hello, Cleveland, then they find out they're in Cincinnati. You know? But I know exactly where we are. And just for those of you who don't know, my wife Elaine and I first moved into Hingham with our young son in 1973 at 13 Sycamore Lane, right on the corner there in the Bradley Woods. And hi, Murray. And we loved it. And it was an incredible introduction. My wife counted 29 preschoolers on our block, and so it was a wonderful place to live. But unfortunately, when you're living there, you either have to. A time comes when you're either going to have to expand or move, and you know, so we moved not too far though, right down the street on Hersey Street, which some of you may remember and be old enough to know as the Oscar Beck House Okay, well, I live in the Oxford Best house, but with, we had 7 fewer children than Oscar had in that house, by the way. So, anyway, this is a night I've really been looking forward to, and I mean this sincerely. The book came out 2 weeks ago yesterday, and I've had a lot of appearances and things. It's been very exciting. I've never been through an experience like this. I've done 11 previous books, and I probably didn't have a sum total, and I'm not being remotely facetious here, I probably didn't have a sum total of 10 signings and 20 radio shows or whatever, but I've already done 70 radio shows, thanks to the, thanks to the publicity arm of Bloomsbury. They've been very supportive, and I've never been treated like this. But this is a night I've been looking forward to because this is home. And from the minute that the book was published, well before the time, my wife said, I hope the Buttonwood's going to get involved, and Buttonwood certainly jumped up and got involved, and I'm here tonight at the library. I'm very happy to be here. One of the questions, the standard question I get asked on all these appearances is how'd the book come about? I mean, and the answer is that I would be very disingenuous if I suggested that I never thought about writing such a book during the course of my career. I think any writer with a healthy ego and a little bit of pomposity thinks that he's got a story to tell. And I did think about it, but I talked myself out of it. I honestly did. I looked at the identity of some very prominent people in my business who had either not written books or who had written them and didn't get the attention they deserved. And I said, I'm flattering myself. This is crazy. Don't worry about it. Just go about your business. But about 4 years ago, an agent named Andrew Blauner, who's a general agent, not just a sports agent, had been an undergraduate at Brown during the Byrd era, and became a reader. He's from New York, and he became a reader of the Globe and myself, and identified himself to me as a fan, and said that he thought the book was viable and I really should do the book. And I said, okay. I was very easy to flatter, and I said, okay, so I did. I said, but I'm not going to do it till I get done with the career, which is going to end officially at the end of the London Olympics. And that's exactly what happened. I officially retired from the Globe on full-time duty after the London Olympics. We got together then and got a proposal, and he shopped the book. And the second stroke of good fortune for me was that he sold the book to Bloomsbury. Bloomsbury's publishing director, that's the title, he's the chief editor and the publisher. His name is George Gibson. George and I had worked on a previous book in 1989. A book on the Celtics. Some of you may have seen it, some of you may have it. It's a beautiful picture book with my text, by the pictures being supplied by the great late Dick Rayfield, who's a outstanding sports photographer. George was the editor of that book up in Addison Wesley Publishing Company in Reading, but then he moved on in New York, and we had no communication in those ensuing years, zero. Never encountered George. Now he's back in the picture and identifying himself yet again as a fan of mine. He was a phenomenal editor. Anybody doesn't understand the role of an editor in these matters, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. Writer writes, but editor makes some strong suggestions. The editor knows that what you've got in this section actually would be better off in that section. He did a masterful job of shaping this thing without changing a word or having me rewrite anything. It's a magical art, and he was fantastic. He was fantastic. He's clearly the best editor I've ever worked with, and I'm really happy to have renewed that whole the relationship, and it's really blossomed into a friendship. And I'm so pleased to be working with these people. The book. I didn't intend originally, I wasn't sure how personal it was going to be as opposed to dwelling on all the professional experiences, the Celtics and the Olympics and all the other stuff, and how personal I was going to make it. But anybody here who's written anything knows that very often, and whether it's a short run, a daily story, or a big picture project like this, the thing somehow takes on a life of its own. I can't explain it any other way. And I found myself writing a little bit more about growing up and the specific time and place, Trenton, New Jersey in the 50s, than I had thought I would. And I was ready for George to say, no, enough of that. This is not what we need. He didn't. He encouraged me. Okay, all right, I'm just listening. And I didn't mind that encouragement. I was happy to do this. And so this beginning, I never intended the book to be chronological. It was not going to be, I was born on February 21st, 1946, taking us to, here it is on 22nd of October 2014, and the lights are out at Hingham. No, nothing like that. I didn't intend that. But I wrote it thematically. I wanted it to be thematic. In other words, chapters on the various aspects. You know, the Celtics, Olympics, international basketball, golf, hockey, football, colleges, ESPN, et cetera, et cetera. But he found a way, without, I said, man, I say it's magic. He found a way to make it the first half reasonably chronological, up to 1988 when I got off the Celtic beat for the third and final time. And then when I became a columnist in '89, to then allow it to become more the thematic way I had thought. So it's kind of half and half. And I don't see if it works. Apparently it works. I also, the big revelation for me was I was able to write about my father. My father died when I was 11. He is the reason why I became a sports person. I mean, there's a DNA or a genetic predisposition or whatever way you want to phrase it, but I was born into a sports-minded family. I do not remember a time, ever, from the earliest recollections of roughly age 4, which I think I would safely say, that when we weren't going to a game, and we weren't preparing to go to a game, or skipping dinner to go to a game, whether it was a local high school, or whether it was college, or whether it was professional baseball, or football, or basketball, or whatever. We were going to games. My father was involved. He was a promoter of public relations, marketing in sports in Trenton, New Jersey, very, very well known there. Then he had 2 years where he was the assistant athletic director at Villanova University in Philadelphia. We spent a lot of time going back and forth to Philadelphia in those years. All I knew was sports in that sense. But the second thing is, well, I talked about my father, and I'm deviating from it, but I had never written about him, and I just had never had occasion to. But becomes a prominent piece of this at the end because I was really, really happy to get this out there. And in the research, I actually discovered a few things about him I didn't know, and including an amazingly wonderful piece that was written about him upon the time of his death by a writer that I had previously alluded to in the book because of another reason. And now I kind of encounter this column that he wrote about my father, which was very, very touching and important to me, and I quote from it liberally in the book. So that was a personal little, I don't know if the word catharsis is overdoing it, but something, and it was important to me. So I was really happy to do that. The overreaching theme I'd like you to have as a takeaway with this thing is that, and Dennis quoted accurately, I identify myself in this business as a fan who happens to be a writer. That is not the norm, I hate to say. The norm is people who have a strong academic and technical interest in sports, but who position themselves as not to care, and only to be clinical, and only to write what they, as they say, the story. Now, that's okay if you're a general writer, a magazine writer, you know, and you just come in and do these stories about people or certain things, and there's no need for you to be plugged in emotionally. I can understand that if you're but I do not understand how people cover teams. You're working in Minneapolis, you're covering the Minnesota Wild, and you're telling your readers that you don't care if they win or lose. You only root for the story. You only want to write about people. Well, but people, not all, so many will tell you this. And my answer to this is, okay, it's not that hard to write about people. If you're a professional writer and you have the word capability and you have a little compassion and sensitivity, curiosity, and experience, I'm telling you, it's not that hard. It's like a layup drill for me. It's not that hard to write about people. I've got personality profiles in the book on 6 people, and I enjoyed writing them, and I'm happy with them, and I'm proud of them. But it just wasn't that hard. I'm sorry. It's not that big a deal. Ask yourself this, I say to them. Absent the game, who would care about the people? The people come and go. Whether you're talking about the pros, you're talking about colleges, the cast of characters revolves right out through the revolving door. The game endures. So if you don't care about the game and outcome and have a curiosity and a fascination about competition, why are you doing this? Why are you doing? Why are you in sports? Why bother? I never understood this, and I always wrote from a point of view of the interest of the fan. You know, which is not to say you don't write as a rooter. You can internally root and care who wins the game. When the game's over, they win, they lose. You go about your business and do it the way it should be done, but from the interest of the fan. And I think that's what I've always tried to convey, and I don't understand why people find that so difficult. I've been chastised for this. And I just say, look, either the results were good or they weren't good. And if I But I think they were good. I think I survived pretty well. I think I've had a general public approval of that approach. So I want everybody who reads the book to come away with the feeling that here's somebody who was predisposed. Well, I think I'm almost predisposed to do this. I do, and let me just back up one more time before I finish that thought. Concurrent with the love of sports was the love of words and writing. I cannot explain that one. The sports thing makes sense. My father, I'm very much a direct, lineage there. The writing thing, I don't know. I just love words, and I like writing. And he would take me to a game, say Trenton Catholic basketball, the big deal in Trenton in those days, Friday night. But I couldn't wait till Saturday morning to read about the game in the paper. I'm talking about 7, 8, 9 years old. Because until I read about it in the paper, it wasn't validated in my mind. That's just the way I'm wired. And I like to read. And people knew by the time I was 9 that the thing to do to give me was books. And I got a subscription to Sport Magazine, which I'm sure many of you remember, which was irreplaceable in the 50s, and Sporting News, which I know many of you know. But I was 9. And there's nothing odd. To me, it was nothing. They didn't think there was anything odd about that. So it's a two-part word, right? Sports, writing. The writing's more important than the sports. In sports, how many people can talk sports? Hundreds, thousands, millions. That's why Sport Talk Radio is now the #1 radio format in America. It's overtaken country. There were more stations programming sports talk than any other format in America. And that started with one station in 1979, WFAN in New York, and everybody said, well, they're going to do it for 24 hours talking sports, and they're never going to make it. And now it's the #1 format in America because people love to talk sports. Yeah, but you throw them into the garden on with an hour and a half deadline after a game and see if they can write about sports. No. I mean, I'm not bragging, but it's true. And that's my expertise. Look, I can't change a light bulb. The left brain, right brain. No, that's not me. So, but I do well with words. And so the two interests coincided, and I been able to get all kinds of breaks to be put in the right place at the right time and again, to make it flourish. All right. So that to me, that's the so now back up. I want people to understand. Here's somebody that loves sports, that was fortunate enough to be in position to develop this interest, this aptitude, and had a career that brought him all over the world eventually, thanks to the Olympics and international basketball. In addition to all the standard things that comprise a career in American sports writing, and I loved it. And I was totally grateful for it. And unlike a lot of other writers, and I watched them, I studied them, believe me, and I watched them, I said, oh my God, I don't want to be that guy, I don't want to be that guy, I don't want to be that guy, because they get to be 50, 60, and they're bored, and they're angry, and they're frustrated, and they don't like anything, and it's all negative, and they're miserable, and they're counting the days till they can get the hell out. And no, I never wanted to be that guy, and I never had a problem being that way, because I still like sports. Lane, my wife, will tell you, I have to admit that I now watch more TV sports than I did when I was working officially, because I'm now trying to still stay viable in television. I got to know what I'm talking about. You can't just talk about 1952. I have to talk about last night. So believe me, eventually I'll get to in front of the set tonight for Game 2 of the series, because But the point is that I love this job. I love the thing, and I want to share that enthusiasm with people. It's not a book in which I'm settling scores or taking names and numbers and all that. There's no, not at all. In fact, it's the polar opposite. This is somebody who really loved the deal, and I'm really grateful that I was able to live that life. And so that's the takeaway. And I'm just happy about, as I said, the good break for a wonderful agent, and he's become a good friend, a wonderful publisher, who are backing me as I've never been backed, believe me, ever before in my life. And it's really exciting and fun, and I'm just, I'm living a dream right now, frankly, as an author. And the other thing I'll say, leave you before we get to questions, anything, is this. The process was different for me. The other 11 books were all written while I was working full-time. And when you're writing books when you're working full-time, you're writing them on nights and weekends and holidays and vacation, and it's like a giant perm paper hanging over your head every day. It's exactly what it's like. And it's miserable. And you know that old line, I don't know who said it. I've got to find out who said it. I don't like writing, I like having written. Well, I can totally relate to that, okay? But this was an exception. This was an exception. For starting out with, I was able to write with a schedule. Like my writing idols, Updike and Roth and all these people. They worked, it's their living. they get up in the morning, they go to the office, they write, they have lunch, they go back, they write, and life goes. It's a job. I was never able to do that. Well, this time I was able to do that, and I had a writing schedule, and I stuck to it. And I didn't have to write on weekends. I did a couple Saturdays when my wife was away, but basically I wrote 4 days a week, had a 5th day, which I called, I reserved for my TV, ESPN and Comcast. I called it Make Money Monday. That was my job. You got to put a little cash in the till. And, but otherwise, I wrote on a regular schedule like a real writer. It was a really interesting experience. And it was easy to write too because I kind of knew the topic, So I knew this guy, and it was actually, I would go so far as to say it was a pleasurable experience. And I know I'm going to if I ever write another book, it won't be as pleasurable, simply because I won't be as comfortable with the subject matter as I was with this one, So that's that. So all that said, I welcome any questions on whatever you want, sports, writing, whatever, books, anything. But I thank you. This is a tremendous turnout. I'm really thrilled. I'm really pleased, and just to be able to be here and do this in Hingham means a lot to me. So thank you very much. Yes.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I've never been a big sports fan, so how do I?
Well, I know.
It's a mix. I call that mixed marriage. It's a mixed marriage.
But my husband once said to me when I was trying to be more involved and get more involved, he said, read the sports page because you'll find some of the best writing in the newspaper. And it's true. I started reading the sports page, and before long, that was the first thing I grabbed in the morning. It is some of the best writing I have ever come across.
Well, I'm so glad you say that. I hope you're specifically referring to the Boston Globe. And not that there's, believe me, I'm a fan. I'm so glad we live in a two-paper town. I can go on and on about that. And we are blessed to live in a two-paper town. I love having the Herald around, and I have many good friends there, and I drive by it and read it every day. So that's that. Thank you. One of the things, the writing level has got over the decades and decades has improved. And it's there's a very high level of writing in sports. And the Globe, I'll just digress a little bit. One of the great pleasures for me was joining the Globe at the time I did in 1969, and that 68 actually, summer intern. The editor of the Globe was Tom Winship. He's one of the great editors of the 20th century. And Tom was not a big sports fan, didn't have great empirical knowledge. He was he was a blue blood, yachting and polo. He knew something about, but baseball, basketball, football, no. But he recognized the value of sports, the sports department in Boston, Massachusetts. Wanted his paper to have as strong a sports department as anybody, and he liked writers. It was a writer's paper as opposed to an editor's paper. There is an enormous difference. I am here to tell you that when Peter Gammons and we started the same day, I hope that name means something to somebody here, when we started the same day as an intern in 68, we were put in a paper that valued writers and allowed us to kind of roam freely. And we weren't restrained in any metaphorical sense, with hands behind our back in a stodgy paper with rigid rules and the 5 W's. It's a bunch of horse bleep, okay? 5 W's, no. No, forget that. Anyway, it's a writer's paper, and that I wouldn't have ever become whatever it is I became, nor would Peter if we were put under the restrictions that many other papers had. Winship, it was instrumental, and that was it. The whole paper was full of great writers, but the sports department he really encouraged, and the editors, Ernie Roberts particularly, I worked for him, was a big fan, a writer's guru and loved writers. So it makes a tremendous difference, and I was just so grateful. It was just, it was luck. I almost went to Georgetown. If I went to Georgetown, everything would have been different. I mean, Washington versus Boston, the Bullets versus the Celtics. No, seriously, you need let me say this. Any writer in sports, to get known, okay, before TV, forget this TV aspect of it, which changes everything. You need a vehicle. I call it a vehicle. You need something to write about that's going to attract some attention. There's excellent writers out there that get buried in circumstances all over America because they never had the chance to have that vehicle that would get them. I had that vehicle. It was the Celtics. It was the Celtics in the 70s and the NBA in general. And I'm totally grateful for that. I had no control over that. I had no control over being 23 and handed the beat because a certain guy left and nobody was there to replace him. And, let's give it to the kid. He seems to like basketball. That was basically what it was. I had no control over that. So those are kind of things I do talk about all this in the book. Yes?
With the demise of local papers and the consolidations of everything, would you recommend anybody going into sports writing now?
Well, you're going into sports writing with the understanding that it won't be done in the daily newspaper for very much longer. There's going to be a need for writers. It's all electronic. It's websites. It's blogs. It's all out there. We've lost so many good writers. The industry in general, the Globe in particular, we have lost about 6 or 7 really qualified, excellent younger, 20s and 30s writers in the last 7 or 8 years to such things as ESPN.com or Yahoo or CBS Sportsline, whatever, because they're going over to that side. That's the future. That's the present and the future. We're not the future. We are the past. We are the newspaper, the thing in your hand, in the past. It's not going to come back the way it ever was. The advertising's disappeared. The young readers do not read newspapers. But there's other ways of having your expression. It's a little different though when you don't have that direct communication with a local audience, and they're going to have to. So the experience will be different. But I would not discourage anyone from wanting to write, but just understand that that old newspaper thing is not going to have much more shelf life. I don't think. Yes.
What do you see as the life expectancy for the Globe?
I don't know for sure. I felt as far back as 15 years ago that I could see the future of. I felt the future of papers would be that sometime sometime maybe no earlier than 2050, but now definitely it'll be earlier than that. That the daily newspaper. Well, what I thought at that time was this: that all papers, they were all dying all over the country, but that there would be enough desire for a newspaper still that a megapolis newspaper could survive. In other words, that New England, for example, there would be one major daily paper, us. All the things in the middle, all the Worcesters and the New Havens and all the dailies would die, but the Hingham journals would survive because people would always want a town crier delivery, okay? That still may happen, okay? That may very well be happening. That may be the only future of newspapers at that level. I don't know. But now we know, that was before the internet. Now we know with the internet having already delivered a fatal blow. It is. There's no miracle drug to save papers from the assault of the internet. That they're all going to die. And I mean at the top. And the Globe is going to be among them. And when? I don't know. 2020, 2025, 2030. I hope it's not 2016, but I don't know. But I'm sorry, I know I sound profoundly pessimistic, but I don't see any way to turn it around.
You don't see that there are always going to be people that are...
No, because they're not regenerating. Every time one of us goes to our final award, it is not being replaced by anybody else. No, there's no zero sum here. No, it's no way. Young people don't. Is there anybody here whose offspring reads a daily paper? Anybody? One hand. No, one. Good. That's one. That's encouraging. It's like, but seriously, the case closed. It's reality. They're not reading. They don't do it. They're not used to it. They don't do it. That's not what they do. So that the form of delivery, the daily newspaper, will not survive. I would love to be wrong, but I don't think I am. Yes.
Why would a major sports team buy interest in the Globe?
He wrote a manifesto out. He printed it in the papers, tacked up on the wall. We'll see how the staying power is. It sounds great. He thought he had some ideas about maybe ways they could regenerate advertising. He may be an idealist. I don't know. I mean, look at all the money he's put in Fenway. When the prior regime wanted nothing to do with Fenway, they wanted to get rid of it, and he saved it. He has. I think there's a lot of idealism in him. A lot of his love of baseball is very pure and very idealistic. I'm not saying he's not a businessman. He may have this romantic notion about papers, and he may find out that I was wrong. I'm grateful that he took it because the alternatives were horrible. The alternatives were all horrible. They would have been just meat-cleaving, awful people wrecking the newspaper. And he certainly is anything but that. But there is a buyout going on. And if they don't get enough hands raised, then we'll see, charitable, we'll see. It's a little test for him, But I'm glad he did it. Yes, good to you.
Yeah, mine's about thick skin. When you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, how many battles did you have with, being down on yourself, wanting to give up, wanting to throw your hands up? And is it easier as you get older, or actually you take it just as personal then? And the other question is, you've been on TV with many different characters, and I personally didn't love some of those characters, and I'm sure most people have their, favoritisms and so forth. How do you work with people like that? That you have your own ego opinion, and you got your way, and you don't really care for their way, but you still were able to work.
Well, in both cases, I really have been blissfully immune from both of the circumstances that you're talking about. I mean, I don't believe if you're any kind of a viable writer with an opinion and a point of view, you're going to run into a conflict with somebody in authority. You're going to be a coach or a manager, a player. That depends. I had those. But not, and then they detailed the biggest one in the book, okay, with the Red Sox in '75. It all worked out. The two people in question that I had the issues with, when I started covering the team 2 years later, go out drinking with them. I mean, it was okay. I'm serious. I survived. Tom Heinsohn, I had issues with Tom Heinsohn. We've been friends for 36 years. Now that we're both away from that issue, we're away from the fray, Got a Tom Heinsohn painting hanging in my living room, but we had a problem. I basically got off the beat in '76, among other reasons, because I didn't want to have a year fighting with him. Wouldn't have been good for anybody, least of all the reader. And as far as the other things concerned, I haven't had that. I don't know. I mean, I have never actively really despised or liked or disliked anybody on any of these shows that I've worked with. We have we have honest disagreements. I have a big disagreements with, like Bill Plaschke I don't like his mind. I don't know how his mind works, but I know he's a good guy, and we're friendly. And it's over. The show's over. Done. It doesn't linger. So I've been lucky that I don't have those problems. Haven't had those problems. Yes.
I was wondering what motivated you to go from Trenton to Boston College, and I'm sure you had other choices. And how was your experience at the high school?
I applied. I went to Lawrenceville School, prep school, where you're going to go to you're going to go to college. So I was a middling to poor student in terms of a grade point. I was concentrating all my efforts on the things I liked, and I had a defeatist attitude towards academic excellence because I knew I would never be at the top of the class in that world. So I just kind of packed it in. I'll be honest, All right, so but I applied to Yale because a lot of my friends were going there, and I took a shot. I applied to Williams because I admired a couple of teachers I had at Lawrenceville that went to Williams. And I applied to BC Holy Cross in Georgetown, which in 1964 were absolutely homogeneous. Nowhere, and the same school, one was in Worcester, one was in Boston, one was in George Washington, really, except Holy Cross is small. I'll try to make the story brief. When the acceptances came out, that fateful day, I was rejected at Georgetown. And the college placement director at Lawrenceville, Tom Eglin, didn't understand it. No, he said, it's crazy. I know he belongs in Georgetown. And he called them. And whatever string he pulled, next thing you know, they're telling me that night, okay, you can get in. Well, I went home, and I was sulking. I was in a, and next day I said, no, I'm going to Boston College. I'm going to Boston College, to hell with them. And I swear to God, that's the best decision I ever made in that sense, only because nothing against Georgetown, but I'm telling you, Boston for me, no way Washington would have worked for me the way Boston has. No way. No possible. It's just not. Boston was a blessing. Okay, now, I love BC. I love BC. I love the first thing happened the second day I was there, I met the woman who's now my wife. We've been together for 50 years now, 45 of them married. And I'm right at the first mixer at the Q Forum, okay? But I didn't apply myself there either because I knew what I wanted to do. And I always say I majored in basketball, minored in baseball, and Snack Bar City, And I didn't, it didn't matter. I worked in the school paper. I did 4 years of play-by-play basketball at WVBC. I got through. I majored in history, which was fun for me. And I was in the sports information office adjunct. That's how and it all worked out. I got to the Globe. That was what I wanted. So college, I have to tell you, fortunately, I wasn't wasting too much of my mother's money because it was a little bit different in those days. Now, I got to tell you one thing, now that he's mentioned college. One conclusion I came to about 15 years ago. There are two things that people in our generation almost universally cannot do. One is repurchase your own house, and two is get into the same school that you went to. I know I couldn't. Now, it's all changed with all those schools. No way, now I would have had to work a lot harder. Maybe if I applied myself, but not the way I approached it, would I ever get in the BC today or Georgetown. So I was a man in the right place at the right time. Yes?
Just started reading before in the first chapter with Dave Cowan.
Yes.
Which shows what I've been reading my whole life, your columns, is how close you get to the athletes. And given that, two-part question, I guess. One is, were you ever conflicted in doing your job as a covering the team and not violating some sort of personal aspect? And secondly, is it possible today for reporters to get so close to athletes?
The first question is, I was conscious of it. I didn't know how far it could go, how you could take it. It's all I knew at the time. I started out with no blueprint. There's no blueprint on how to cover a team. I had this access. It was there for me. No one else, I was there. I was exclusively, they were like my exclusive property on a day-to-day basis. The Herald didn't have a guy go to practice. There were no radio or TV coverage in those days. It was Bob Ryan of the Boston Globe in there every day, in the locker room, watching practice, learning all the plays, doing my story, traveling with them, going out to eat and drink with them. It was natural. And I was lucky the team was good. See, if the team's bad, then there's going to be many more conflicts. And there were a few issues that arose, but particularly between myself and Tom Heinsohn and the conflicts and the players, and what they were telling me and what he was telling me, and they weren't always meshing. And, I had to sift through all that. After 7 years, though, I was only 30. I was worn out with it emotionally, and I knew I couldn't go any further with this. That's as far as it was somehow, some way wearing on me, and particularly the Heinsohn thing. And I couldn't get away from it, and I knew that if I did another year as it was going to be a bad year, and I didn't want that, and it was stupid. The readers would have suffered. I would have been miserable. This was no good, so I got away from it after 7 years, and I was only 30. So the answer is yes, it did wear on me, and I swore that if I ever did it again, I'd never get that close, and I didn't. Now, I was close to Bird, but no way as close as I was to Cowens and Havlicek and Silas and Westfall, that bunch. No, I never did that again. But, your second part, it's a fantasy. Any writer today reading this it's like reading Jules Verne. It doesn't exist today. It's impossible. So this is never an issue. The only people that have a kind of personal access to players that we had, and I don't know if it's exactly comparable, are the big name TV people. I would suspect that Stephen A. Smith has a contacts list of LeBron and Kobe and all the important people. I suspect that. TV is a magnet that newspaper people can't compete with. And I suspect in football that Mortensen and Schefter and all have the same access. No writer has that access. Nobody. And because the circumstances and logistics entirely different. We just don't have the access to them. You don't go to practice, you don't hang around them, you don't go to travel with them. It's all different. So, the answer is no. It never happened today. I'm glad it happened. It was, it was fun. It was great. It was, and I learned. Basketball. I learned the NBA from these people. It was a tutorial every day. I had Professor Heinsohn, Professor Havlicek, Professor Nelson, Professor Sanders, and I saw things that you're not going to see today. I remember there was a game. I wish now I'm thinking about why didn't I put this in the book? Well, you can't do everything. Okay. They played a game in Oakland. Great game. They lose the game by 3. 115-112 was a terrific game. And in 1972, in December, and
You know that.
Oh, I just know. And I go back to the hotel after I wrote, and there in the parking lot, Tom Sanders is out there positioning with Don Chaney, trying to explain the nuances of defending the pick and roll to the kid in the parking lot. I saw that vignette. I was around. I was part. I was part of the landscape with them. So. Those are things you can't replace. I keep repeating. I'm glad I did it, when I did it, and where I did it. In Boston. Yes.
I wanted to ask, with the Celtics that you covered, and even before you covered the Celtics, you have that '60s team with Russell, and then you have the team that you covered so closely in the '70s with Collins and Havlicek and Silas. I always thought that team sort of got lost in the rating of the great Celtics teams. Then you have the Bird, the big three. I was wondering how you rank that team in the seventies, because I was starting '73, for instance, and I remember you saying this, if Havlicek doesn't hurt his shoulder
Right.
in the playoff series against the Knicks,
Yeah.
they'd be
Okay,
looking at another championship.
when, I wish I had the story in front of me, because when they won they won it in '08, and the next day I was asked to write just such a piece. I was asked to commit to rate the Celtic teams historically. And of course, '85, '86 is the no-brainer number one. There's no issue there. For me, anyway, I don't say anybody can argue that. Then you have the teams, historically, there were teams in the '60s that, one team had 8 Hall of Famers. So, hard not to, give them good due. But you're talking about making an excellent point. I think I had neither championship team, but the '72-'73 team that won 68 games that you're alluding to when Havlicek got hurt against the Knicks as a number 3 or 4. It was high. And you're so right, that team was the best team in basketball with Havlicek. And they weren't without him, but they were. And the Knicks were wily, but they had them beaten, and they were better that year. But the Knicks won, and Havlicek got hurt. Anyway, so yes, they are falling through the cracks of history, even for the Celtics fans. And they shouldn't be. They were best running teams. That's the best running teams that I ever saw were those teams. And Collins was unique for us, and Havlicek was still the best player in the league overall. And Nelly was leading the league in field goal percentage at age 35. Nothing on all jump shots. And that was a special team. You're right. And I don't think that they fared as well in history as they should have. No question. Yes, sir.
There's probably overlaps with the gentleman's question. What major sports teams in Boston provided you with the most excitement and drama, irrespective of their winning a national title or not? And who are some of the most inspirational players on those teams that created them to gel and to strive for the maximum fulfillment, whether they won championship or became a runner-up?
The first answer I've already given, which is the '85, '86, because I came to the conclusion, I came up with a line that I rather like, which is they rendered meaningless the concept of the meaningless game. Because every night from January on, once they kicked in gear, they kind of putzed around a little bit in November, December, lost some games they definitely should have won. If they had made a goal to win 70 games, they would have done it, but they didn't have such a goal at all. Once they really kicked in January, every game was a pleasure. I mean, I remember a friend of, I know somebody that he may have a tape of every one of those games. You just knew this is something you want for history. So that team, for sure, was like that. I'm not the biggest football guy, but one of those 14-2 teams, I think, the one that had Corey Dillon for 1,600 yards, and you got that great linebacking core. And Bruschi, answer your question, the guy is Bruschi. Teddy Bruschi was a football player, and a really inspirational guy. This is before he comes up with a stroke and comes back. This is before. We're talking now, after the stroke, oh my God, and he is a wonderful guy. He's a good guy. And he's an admirable player. And I think that one Patriots team was 14-2. I guess that was the second championship one. Maybe they went into my head, I'm sorry. That I would cite. And then of course the 04 Red Sox. The combination, 03 and 4, the 2 years, Millar, and Kevin Millar brought a spirit to that team that was irrepressible. I remember it occurred to me after he was around for a couple of months, I said, I never met a guy like this that looked so happy to be there every day in all the years I covered anything. And I suddenly went up to him and I said, you're happy every day? What is this? No, and he explained, he was a replacement player, number one. Nobody even mentions that. And he escaped the stigma because he was just such a likable person and a contributor. But he came in from the independent league. Every day he had in organized baseball was a gift for him, and every day in the major league was a huge gift. It was Christmas. And he treated it that way. He really did. He absolutely exuded enthusiasm and gratitude every day he played. And when they were down 0-3, who's the guy that said, "Oh, we can win 4 in a row. We've won 4 in a row, and don't let us win." Kevin Millar. He's really qualified, I think. I hope that helps answer a little. Yes.
I'm a Tony Kornheiser Little, so thank you very much for coming on the radio show every week.
Yeah.
Second thing I want to say is I'm originally from Pittsburgh, but I moved to Hingham in 2008, and you're from New Jersey, originally moved to Boston years ago, and have been here since. I found that the Boston fan base for baseball is the most knowledgeable baseball fan base probably in any city. Not been around for a long time, but if you agree, do you know why? And the second thing is, how did you get the Hingham Hammer nickname?
That's pure alliteration that they came up with on the spot.
Okay.
That's all. You know, Hingham Hammer, PTI. No, that's all. That's just the alliterative thing they came up with. You know, it's fun. I'm sorry, the question,
About the baseball fan base.
no, the fan base.
Is that every generation?
I think it's a little bit exaggerated as long as they're singing Sweet Caroline when they're down 8-0. All right? I had to get that dig in, okay? I'm not a fan of that whole phenomenon. I sit down, I do not open my mouth, I frown, I look like, you know, it's terrible. Anyway, history and tradition. Boston does have as strong and rich a detailed historical base as any city. Yeah, the Cincinnati Reds, 1869, okay, fine. There was a league that predated the National League, which was formed in 1876, okay? Boston dominated that league. So we have a legacy, it goes back to 1871. Then the National League was formed in 1876, and the Red Sox, or not the Red Sox, the Boston team was a charter member National League team. During the 90s, the 1890s, the two dominant teams were the Baltimore Orioles and the Boston team, which had different nicknames, Bean Eaters being one of them. And they won at least 3 times in the 90s. And then the American League comes into being, and we have a team. And in 1903, guess who the first World Series is a participant? Boston Red Sox. And just that tradition. So we're talking about great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandfather passing it on. I think that's really part of it. I really do. And that's as good an answer as I can give. I think the tradition here is incredibly deep, incredibly strong in many areas. Now, we're getting to be more of a transit population, and you know, I understand all that. But I think that would account taking us at least up into the 60s. You know, from now on, I question at times that alleged intelligence and on basis that go beyond Sweet Caroline, but I can't get beyond Sweet Caroline. Yes.
Maybe some for your one source of like sports media on your newspaper. In the process of like sports writers now with like the addition of like blogs and websites, it's entirely different from it was before.
It's number one. All the advances have given every fan a voice. Every fan can have a voice. Twitter, blog, you do it yourself. Easy. It's changed the dialogue. And it's confused it in the eyes of the athletes and the participants sometimes, you know, because they kind of don't pay strict attention to where the criticism, if that is coming from, they don't like it. You know, it's muddied the waters a little bit for the writers, but it's perfectly fair. You know, oh look, to be a fan today, you could spend 24/7. I mean, you're saturated with opportunity to accumulate information, to express yourself that we did not have. You know, I mean, I mentioned earlier about reading sport magazines, sporting news. You needed them. One was a monthly, the other was a weekly, and you know, there was no West Coast those in the 50s at all. You know, you listen to games on the transistor radio. It was just there weren't that many games on TV. It was a game of the week in most of America. And I grew up in a city, and I mentioned in the book that fortunately got all the channels in New York and Philadelphia, and I saw a lot of baseball that wasn't unavailable to most people in America. It was one of the reasons I became me. You know, I had that opportunity. But this is a fan-driven. And the public has a say. The whole thing with Roger Goodell and Ray Rice and the adjudication, that was court of public opinion forced him. The court of public opinion rendered a verdict, and he had to deliver and come up with a sentence, which they came up with after we bungled the thing in the beginning. But the court of public opinion, people made that happen. That was a very telling thing. So, but the expression everybody has, and everybody can express himself, and we didn't have that. Yes.
Going into that, you kind of brought into what I wanted to ask about was about Bill Simmons with the whole thing with the blog, with his podcast.
Yes.
When that came up, I was curious if you had any thoughts about what happened with that suspension.
Oh, you know, I couldn't. Bill dared people to suspend him, and he did. He clearly had some kind of agenda in his head. You know, he's got a contract coming up. There's a lot of speculation about what he's going to do. You know, he's a brand, he's a franchise, he's a unique force. What's he going to do? Is he best served staying under the umbrella of ESPN, even if there's occasional restrictions placed on him, or is he best served going out? That's a question I can't answer. I don't know. I'm going to be talking to him my next couple of weeks. So he wants to do a podcast, so I can pop the question, you know, we'll see where he's going. But why he invited that, there had to be a reason that he that he knew they were going to respond the way they did. I would think they weren't going to ignore him, and he said, he dared them to suspend him, and he did. They gave him 3 weeks. I don't know. So we'll see how that plays out. But you probably do know. He does have by this time next year, he's either going to be another new contract ESPN or out there somewhere else doing what he does, which is very popular. Let me get in the back, sir.
When you were starting out, did any of the old-time writers take you under their wing, or were you sort of thrown to the wolves?
Well, I never sat down and, under the tree like Plato and Aristotle or anything like that. But the guy who I looked to and watched and listened to and who was encouraging and would have dinner with me at least twice a year during the season just because was Bud Collins. And that's the guy. There were other people that were friendly to me. Cliff Keen was friendly to me. Bob Sales was friendly to me. The late Harold Kaiser, who was a very prim and proper man. It wasn't in his nature to extend too much, but he was certainly courteous. Bud, though, I'll always remember fondly how, and Cliff was great too. Some people are like this. Cliff was the guy who makes sure you go to Fenway, he'd introduce you to everybody in the room. Bobby Ryan, whoever the manager was, or that was great. He was very good as well. But Bud was really the guy that I looked to and admired, and let's face it, he was at the top of the line. Yes.
Being on TV, do you prefer PTI or Around the Horn, or is it different being on one of them compared to writing and relaying your opinion?
Well, the fact is that the most fun you can have on TV is PTI. And the very simple reason is the number. There's 5 people on Around the Horn, and there's 2 people on PTI. More time for you. More time for me. No! The ham factor. If you want to perform, you got more chance to perform on PTI. And that show was created for those 2 guys for a very good reason, but the format fits me perfectly. I love that format. It's perfect for me, too. And I have been privileged to be the primary fill-in since they started in the summer. First year they needed a sub, I was the guy. And I'm still the guy, so I'm very happy. Yeah, PTI. Nothing else Around the Horn, I like it. So on a scale of 1 to 10, if Around the Horn's an 8, PTI's a 9.5. All right, that's how I'll put it that way. Yes.
Bob, what's your opinion on the feasibility of Boston hosting the Summer Olympics?
I was waiting for that. God, it took 50 minutes to get to that one, okay? I rhapsodize in the book about the Olympics, as Dennis told you. I love the Olympics. I can't imagine my career without the Olympics. I like the pageantry. I like everything about it. Somewhere else. And it's simply this. I don't know where they're coming with this number, 4.5 billion. I don't know where they're coming up with it. I don't know what. Has anybody? Now I'm asking a question. I'm not being. Does anybody seen a reasonable proposal about the stadium that must be built? Where it's going to be, and what's going to happen to it after the 2 weeks of the Olympics? You're not going to use Foxborough. It doesn't even have a track. So forget that. You need a stadium. Now, and then the aftermath of it, the velodrome that always goes to waste, the natatorium that always goes to waste. Look at Beijing, a mess. That the big stadium sitting there doing nothing. The swimming thing, the ice cubes sitting there doing nothing. Athens, which was complete, craziness on their part, but a wonderfully charming host. We would be great, by the way, if let's say, Steve Ballmer or Gates or Buffett wants to underwrite this whole thing for us, or write a check for $10 billion, and then figure out what's going to happen to the stadium. Maybe dismantle it and take it home, give it to his grandchildren. Good. I would volunteer. I'll do anything. I'm telling you, if I'm still alive in 2024 and we have an Olympics, all right, I will volunteer. But it's craziness. I just don't see it happening. But we would be great. What you need for a successful Olympics, in my view, we have 11 of them. Gathering places, number 1. You need a gathering place. Okay, got City Hall Plaza. That's not that big, but it's big. Picture the Commonwealth Mall from the Kenmore Square to Public Garden, with some nice kiosks and stands, and maybe some sculpture, whatever. But that could accommodate. That would be perfect. You need a place like that. The waterfront by then presumably will have a much better look, and it's getting better all the time, but a much better look. That would be part of the deal. I know it is part of their deal. We would be great. People would love it, and you would love it, and it would be fun to have it. But I just think it's impractical, and I don't hear a good explanation of how they're planning to do this that makes sense. It's almost as if they're all naive and none of them have ever been to an Olympics. They better go to Athens, they better go to Beijing and then check out and forget about Montreal. They're still paying for theirs, I think. So, you know. Yes?
I was fascinated before when you talked about being a fan.
Yes.
And that you're open about, you know.
Always open, never
being
hate
a
it.
fan. So I remembered when the Red Sox won the World Series, it was just a fascinating moment on TV. I don't know if you remember, but Gabe Kapler and Peter Gammons, when Gabe said, "Come on, Peter, admit it, you're happy about this," and Peter wouldn't do it. He was just like, he didn't really show his enthusiasm. And I always saw that as, geez, Peter Gammons wants to show
He's a much bigger fan than I'll ever be.
I'm sure
he just believe me, I know Peter very well.
You know he's a passionate
Nobody.
fan, and Gabe Kapler was right.
Yes.
I'm sure that was the happiest moment in Peter
You could, you know, it'd be very easy, there's a way to handle that. I don't know why Peter did that. Who's he kidding? Stop.
Yeah.
Those of us who know him, stop it, will you?
But since you're willing to talk about it, I'd love to hear you talk about your own fandom. And, you know, you grew up in New York, raised your family here in the Boston area. Were you a New York fan growing up? Are you a Boston fan now? Did you show your fandom to the players when you covered the Celtics? Were you allowed to? Like, what was that like?
It doesn't work that way. It's not, see, I say I'm a fan, it means I love the games, I want the team to win. It's better when they win than when they lose, okay? There have been teams, now there have been times, and this is what being a fan's all about. Here's a perfect example. The 01 Red Sox, after 9/11, if you remember, they had to finish the season. They were terrible. That's when Joe Kerrigan came in, the dumb decision by Duquette, make a manager. It was a disaster. It was mocked by everybody. I like Joe, but he was not a manager. It was a joke, and it was just viewed internally as idiocy to name him manager, and of course it was a disaster. And I wrote a column, that team was unlikable. That was an unlikable bunch. So I didn't root for them. But I happened to be a season ticket holder, by the way, at that point. At that point, I was into it for about 10 years. And, you know, but I went because I love baseball. But I didn't root for them. If they win, they lost. I didn't get excited about it at the time. But I wrote a column which I said, I think I had 19 games left, okay, after 9/11. I said, I wish they could play a 19-header and get this thing over. I want them out of my sight. So that's part of being a fan, positive or negative. It's not as if, when I say I'm a fan as a writer, you watch the game, you may root internally. I think it's wise for them. Who wouldn't want the home team to win? The players are happier, the manager's happier, the readers are more receptive. I don't understand people that don't think it's better for the home team to win. I always wanted the home team to win, except when I didn't, you know what I mean? When they were despicable, then I didn't want them to win.
Yeah.
They were despicable. Okay. I didn't have that, but that hasn't happened that often. Pardon me?
Did you root for New York teams?
No, I grew up
Or were
in
you
Trenton,
just
New Jersey,
always
by the
kinda
way,
different?
not New
Oh,
York.
Sorry, yeah.
More
Giants.
oriented toward Philly in general than New York, but I did root for the New York Giants, both the football team, the football Giants, and, as we still call them, by the way, and those of us from down there, still the New York football Giants, even though they left, the other Giants left in 1957, and around that, and longer in San Francisco now than they were in New York, but we won't get into that. And the baseball Giants, and secondarily the Phillies. So yes, I came up here, my first 2 years here, as I describe in the book, indifferent to the Red Sox. They were terrible, and there was no cachet, and Fenway wasn't the iconic cathedral. It was like the old sofa at Grandma's house, you know, and I hardly went. And then 67 happened. And I'm not going to get into that. You all know what that means. That's a dividing line of Red Sox history. I fell under the spell. It's all in the book. And you know, I became a fan, a big fan. Went to a lot of games. That turned me into a Red Sox fan from that point on. But when you're covering, you watch the game. And then when it's over, you got to put on your journalist hat. It isn't that hard. I don't know why people find this to be such a dichotomy. But a lot of people make a big fuss about this. Oh, you can't be a fan. Well, no, I'm a fan. I love baseball. I love everything about baseball. I think it's the best game ever invented. For me, I would defend that premise. Certainly it's the most conversational part, by far, of all the games. And I know the history of baseball. And I write in the book that I know more about baseball than I know about anything else. And then there's one thing I point out. Everybody in this earth, most people don't think about this. But I don't care if you're a Kalahari Bushman or if you're, you know, Charlie Baker. Every person on this earth knows more about one thing than they know about every other thing. Everybody in this room, you probably never thought about it, but you know more about something. Cooking, weaving, stamp collecting, you know, shoveling snow, I don't know what it is, but you know more about something than you know about everything else. And the thing I know more about is baseball. And I'm talking about history, numbers, statistics. If I had to, think of it this way, what would you do if somebody said, you got a filibuster for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours a day, just, for a purpose, maybe to make money or maybe to save your, no, I'm gonna get moving. You have to pick a topic. Well, I know what my topic is. That would be baseball. Okay, I think we're running, yeah, it's 8 o'clock. Let's take one more.
Yeah, I just want to know whether, I don't know if you can share this with us or not, but can you tell us what the Boston sports writers really feel about Bill Belichick?
I think that the problem with Belichick is that he's one thing for a beat person, he's another thing for a columnist. And I fortunately only covered him as a columnist, which he was okay. I could deal with it. If you're a beat person and every day you got to get information and you got to get the meat and potato stuff, and he won't dish and he won't do it and he makes your life difficult and he withholds information and then gets arrogant and rude and all that, it's difficult. If you're a writer, a columnist, and you're watching this, you can write about that. You can say he was fill in the blank again, and the other thing about him that I don't think that I've always observed, and maybe I'm out there, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that the local media press, printed press in particular, has taken full advantage of what he has to offer. In other words, if you're covering the team, I'm going to presuppose you like football. It might be a job for some people, but if I covered football, it would have to be more of a job than a passion, but I know enough about it to do it. He is so eager to share this knowledge that he has that surpasses empirical knowledge of football, that may surpass that of anybody in the league. Anybody, okay? And it's a week goes on, and by Friday, when the practices, game plan's in, and it's an easy day, you push the right button with him. He'll go hypothetical, which a lot of people won't. History, oh my God, does he know football history? Theory, technique about positions, push the right button. You get him gushing about football, and he's a different person. They never seem to want to do that. And to me, it's foolish. And so, but he's very complicated, in terms of, he doesn't care about the image he presents. Right. Okay. But there's a whole other guy there, I'm speaking about a Hingham resident, by the way, I'm sure some of you may be his neighbor, I don't know. But, the guy who went on tour with Bon Jovi, the guy who was the other man in a marriage, breaking up a marriage. Who knew that guy existed, but he did, it's real. And, whoa, when did he find the time? Who knew? But that guy, so there's a flesh and blood guy there, for the few people that get to see him. I had one social encounter in all those years. At the Jacksonville Super Bowl, he has had a policy during the Super Bowl years of inviting selected members of the media for a small dinner with his aide. He's got this aide, Burge, the mysterious Burge Nigerian. That's his right-hand man. And there were about 6, 7 people. I sat right across from him for 3 hours. We started out, we had an icebreaker with a mutual friend in coaching fraternity. That was a little icebreaker. And he was terrific. He was charming, and so but he's compartmentalized. He's not hired to smooze the media. He's hired to win football games. That's the way he looks at it, and doesn't care about what you think, I think. He just wants to win games, and as long as Bob Kraft is happy, he's happy. Well, thank you. Thank you.